Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorcast, and today I am here with Josh and we're going to be reviewing the first weekend of the new Formula 2 season in Bahrain. It was a very exciting first weekend in two races that were really decided by some fantastic strategical decisions, both of which didn't seem to be the right call at the first to start with, but then they came good towards the end of the race, which was made for two very, very exciting finishes. So to start off with, we had in qualifying we actually had three rookies in the top three, and to start off with in the race we had Norman Nato and Charles Leclerc battling off the start, but in the end Artem Markelov managed to win through by pitting a little bit later than both of them and coming through in the end to win the race on his fresher tyres. So Josh, what were your overall opinions of the weekend as a whole, and particularly that first race where Markelov came through, and then obviously a similar sort of thing but a bit more exciting in the second race with Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, it was just fantastic, to be honest, the whole weekend. Really glad that F1's main feeder series is back. Really does put F1 in the shade sometimes, but yeah, it was a fantastic weekend. Like you mentioned, two great races, two great strategies, two great winners. They really were winners because they really did have to fight for it, and master stroke from Markelov, to be honest, in the feature race, and Leclerc as well. Great strategy from the Prama's team. And he executed it brilliantly. I mean, you wouldn't believe he was a rookie, the way he carved through the field without even the slightest bit of contact. So yeah, really good weekend, and great wins for Markelov and Leclerc.
Yeah, I think what stood out for me from those two races is both drivers really did have to fight for it, quite literally, especially with Leclerc. I think it was something like P14 with not that long to go, and he ended up winning the race, which was fantastic to see for a rookie in his first race. He's definitely stood out, which we'll come on to later, but we'll start with something which was not so good, and that was the bit of a weird incident in qualifying between Malia and Nabil Jeffrey. So what were your thoughts on that one? That's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, that was pretty terrible, to be honest. Not sure quite what Malia was doing. I mean, I'm surprised these incidents don't happen more often, to be honest, in qualifying, especially in Formula 2, but we don't see it very often. Was definitely a shame to see it, because it was pretty clumsy, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it kind of ruined qualifying a bit as well, because quite a few drivers, including Markelov, didn't really get to set their fastest time. They were hampered by the yellow flag, so it did kind of skew qualifying a bit, and that's why Charles Leclerc was on pole by such a margin, by 6/10 from his teammates. So yeah, Prema won too as well in qualifying. A very good way for them to start the season with two rookies. Nick de Vries as well. Probably the star of qualifying, I'd say, because I think I kind of expected Leclerc to be up there, but de Vries, we kind of mentioned it, I think, in the preview, that Rapax looked pretty strong at the end of last year and pretty strong at testing, but I don't think I expected this. And of course, starting on the front row as well, because Fualco got a penalty, I believe. It was either impeding or some yellow flag disorder anyway. Only three places, but yeah, great effort from both the Pramas and Nick de Vries.
Yeah, I have to say that qualifying incident was a bit of a clumsy one. I don't know what caused it. Maybe Malia just didn't get the communication from his team, but I think it was just a little bit of inexperience really showing through. And as you were saying, the rookies really did do a fantastic job to kind of open up the championship and show that it might not be all the experienced guys at the top of the championship by the end of the season, but one of our returning drivers, Artem Markelov, as we were saying, came good towards the end of the first race with a fantastic bit of strategy. Obviously, he didn't start off quite so well. Nato and de Klerk were battling for the lead at one point, and obviously Markelov towards the end of his first stint did have a bit better pace, and he did manage to take the lead at one point, although obviously coming back towards the end of the race and having to do it all again, as we know, and in the end winning the race by quite a considerable margin, actually, given the circumstances. And this is something we've seen from Artem Markelov before, actually. Obviously, a certain Monaco race last year, although it might have been a little bit more down to luck that time. But would you say strategy is something that is maybe one of Markelov's strengths and could help him out this year in a championship that kind of comes down to strategy so much?
Yeah, definitely. It's absolutely crucial, as you mentioned. But he seemed to have a pretty good pace as well, compared to what we've seen previously. I mean, usually he's only pretty quick at Spa, but in kind of last year and certainly in this weekend, he showed he really does have the pace. Throughout the weekend, qualifying was always his weakness, and it was this weekend as well. But he pretty much proved that it didn't really matter because of this brilliant strategy, whereby he was about 10 seconds behind Nato and Leclerc, and then and just actually absolutely managed to drop the hammer just at the right time, and was kind of 2-3 seconds a lap quicker, and just absolutely carved his way through past Nato and Leclerc. So yeah, it was pretty easy actually in the end for Markelov. But yeah, fantastic strategy. Russian time are really good on their tyres. I think it's a trait with the car. So it's not all just Markelov being super good on his tyres, but you've got to give him an awful lot of credit. And like you said, he got his last win on strategy. This one was on strategy. But I think that Monaco one had a lot more luck, to be honest. This one was pretty much on genuine pace and a finely executed strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic job from Markelov this weekend, both in terms of pace and tyre management. A really significant combination, especially in the main feature race in F2, sorry. As I said in the preview, I need to stop calling it GP2. But anyway, moving on to our two British drivers, who both had fairly solid weekends. They were both... well, in the second race we did see Ollie Rowland challenging for the win, but they both had solid point scoring finishes in both races. Obviously we had Jordan King passing Ollie Rowland on the last lap for 4th place in the feature race, and Ollie Rowland in the end finishing on the podium after all the late drama in the sprint race, with Jordan King in 5th place in the end in that one. And we said in the preview that Ollie Rowland really needs to be winning the championship this year. And him and Jordan King both a fairly solid start to the season. So from a British point of view, what would you make to their start of the season?
Interesting one, I think, for both of them. Starting for Jordan King, of course, at the MP Motorsport team. And really, I think that was pretty much the maximum he could have extracted, really. He's pretty much looking like he's already doing a similar job to what Rowland did last year, whereby he's just going to be getting those consistent points finishes, maybe just kind of clipping at the heels of the podium. I don't think he's going to be winning any races this year, to be honest, even though I think he's capable of it in the right car. But I think, yeah, this is a good sign of things to come for Jordan King, hopefully just continuing this consistency. And as you mentioned, did a great job to pass Rowland on the last lap in the feature race. And yeah, as Rowland, of course, narrowly missing out on the win in the sprint race as well. So I think we've seen the pace there, to be honest, to win the championship. Qualifying didn't go his way, and kind of the feature race, he showed promise early on, but kind of faded. So yeah, I think there is championship promise shown there, but there certainly isn't any kind of championship domination promise that was maybe predicted by some pre-season. So I think this title is very close, and I don't think Rowland's going to be running away with it whatsoever. So yeah, important few rounds I think ahead for him. He's got to kind of get up there with Leclerc, particularly in qualifying, and then try and really do well in that feature race, because at the moment, he's looking slightly improved on last year, but I'm not seeing that massive step, to be honest. But would say he's going to win the championship just for the moment. Of course, only 2 races in. Yeah,
obviously Ollie Rowland not having sort of the dominant weekend that some people would have predicted coming to this one. He kind of had a bit of a quiet one, given all the hype and the build-up in pre-season with Charles Leclerc and Markelov to an extent as well, taking most of the limelight from that one. But as you said, I think Rowland has shown a lot of promise. He's definitely made a step up from last season, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get his first win on the board in Spain. I certainly think he can, if everything just clicks into place like it maybe didn't quite do so in Bahrain. And Jordan King obviously having a solid start to his season, not much more he could really have done, so I think he can be happy with that one. So we touched on the rookies a little bit, obviously, about how they locked out the top 3 positions in qualifying, and Leclerc obviously was the outstanding one, as we were saying, on pole by 0.6, although again the crash may have contributed to that somewhat, but still a 3rd and a 1st, and he leads the Drivers' Championship at the moment by 8 points. So would you make him an early favourite at this stage?
Yes, definitely. I think he really showed what he could do in qualifying and in the sprint race as well. Basically lost a feature race, not on a lack of pace, but a lack of tyre conservation. Possibly a weakness of Premier this season, but of course they countered that in the sprint race by just making an extra pit stop and still winning. So I think, yeah, Leclerc's definitely the favourite for me. Although I did predict Rowland in our preview, I did predict Leclerc, to be fair, in Reed Motorsport's predictions. So that was looking pretty good. I think as the weekend kind of went on, Leclerc definitely put himself in the frame. Saw a lot of praise from people kind of watching Formula 2 for the first time. Loads and loads of people really quickly identifying him as a man of the future. I think he was doing well pretty much at a similar sort of stage in the weekend where kind of Palmer and a few other drivers on the F1 grid weren't doing so well. So I think a lot of high praise from Leclerc from a lot of people, and I think people are really starting to notice. So yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of hype surrounding Leclerc, especially after that second race, and I think it was quite a lovely touch that a lot of people noticed that it was Jules Bianchi who actually was the first one to find Charles Leclerc, as it were, and so obviously he would have been very happy to see Leclerc doing so well in his F2 debut, so that's very nice to see. As we were saying about the other rookies, Nick de Vries had quite a solid weekend. He was very, very quick in qualifying and had a couple of good point scoring finishes in the end, although he may have hoped for a little bit more. Fuoco, although he did manage to qualify on the front row despite his penalty, of course, wasn't quite on the same pace as Leclerc and was very much overshadowed by him, and sits down in 11th in the championship at the moment on just 2 points, so he would have hoped for a little bit more, especially in comparison to his teammate and Alexander Albon having quite a solid weekend again. Double points for him once again this weekend, which is really going to be the aim for a lot of these guys this season. So how would you say some of the other rookies, such as the De Vrieses, the Fuocos, the Albons, and some of the other guys who maybe didn't do so well this weekend or didn't score points, such as Ralph Boschung, for example, how would you say they settled in so far?
We'll start off with the highest placed one then, of course, apart from Leclerc, which was Albon, as you mentioned. I think a really solid weekend for him, to be honest. The ART does not look where it was probably a couple of years ago when Van Dorn was driving it. The team may be kind of not quite going in the direction they want to. They got Matsushita, of course, who had a difficult weekend because he finished 8th, of course, in the feature race. Was meant to be on pole, but then was grounded in the garage, so couldn't start the race from pole. Had to start from the pit lane. But yeah, Albon pretty much matched him all weekend and, of course, beat him in the feature race. So yeah, great weekend for Albon. De Vries, and yeah, really, really good. He had Johnny Giocotta, of course, as a teammate, vast experience, and pretty quick as well. De Vries beat him in pretty much every session, or he did beat him in every session. Fell away in the feature race with a bad tyre wear. Didn't quite work out for him, but he seemed to learn his lessons in the sprint race and came home a pretty good 6th from, of course, 10th on the grid. So yeah, I think De Vries is definitely one to watch. Maybe one that people weren't kind of putting a massive kind of light on at the start of the season, but I think from now on, he's got a really kind of good potential to build on from this weekend. Fuoco, as you mentioned, yeah, disappointing, completely overshadowed by Leclerc. Let's see how he goes from here, but yeah, certainly the early indications are not very good. Delétraz and Boschung, both of them had a pretty miserable weekend, the two Swiss guys. Delétraz and the whole racing engineering team, we'll probably talk a bit more about them. But yeah, racing engineering not having the weekend, or Campos Racing either. Delétraz and Boschung, Delétraz stalled on the grid, I believe, which he did in Abu Dhabi on his debut. So that's 2 races now, so not ideal for Delétraz, but we'll see how it goes from here. Did a good recovery in the sprint race to go up to 12th from 20th on the grid, which was pretty good. So I think we haven't seen the most of him for sure. But yeah, not a good start for him, and not a good start for Boschung either, with that retirement, of course, in the second race through no fault of his own. I thought he drove well in the feature race, but Campos and racing engineering not where they want to be, and I think the drivers are definitely suffering from that. Sergio Santacamera was in the pit lane in the sprint race, so he didn't really, he basically retired from that race, although he did get to the end. He was very, very far off the back. And then in the feature race, he had a decent race, was fighting with Boschung, actually finished ahead of Boschung, but then got a penalty for pushing him off the track. It's a bit of a scrappy weekend for Camera, but to be fair, he is the youngest driver on the grid, so not going to judge him too much yet. And yeah, that pretty much rounds out the rookies, actually. Not too many rookies on the grid this year, and really only Leclerc and Albon and De Vries having a good weekend.
Yeah, as you were saying, much to build on for a lot of the rookies out there this weekend. And we were talking about ART, obviously Albon having a solid weekend, but Matsushita really, really struggling on his tyres towards the end of the feature race. Obviously, it did give him reverse grid pole, but then he wasn't able to take it in the end. So a difficult first weekend for him, and you sort of touched on these teams at first, but we've got 3 teams who are yet to score, and they are Trident Racing Engineering, who I did actually tip to have quite a good season in the preview, and then Campos. So what went wrong for them, and where could they improve, really?
Yeah, interesting one. If we look at last season, obviously Arden were right down there, but now they've got Norman Nato, and they've pretty much solved their problems, because Nato did an excellent job to finish second, and would have been right up there in the sprint race had he not had that, of course, collision, which really wasn't his fault. It was more kind of a racing incident on the opening lap. But yeah, looking at the guys at the bottom there, we got Trident, of course, who I think we predicted right at the start that they would have a pretty miserable season. When you have a driver lineup of Nabil Jeffrey and Sergio Canamasis, with all due respect, you're going to have a difficult year. So I think, unfortunately, they're probably going to be kind of grounded there at the bottom. They'll probably pick up a few points, but can't expect too much from them. But yeah, definitely expected, like we mentioned, racing engineering, quite a bit more from them, from Malia and Delétraz. But let's see how they go from here. Seem to have a better sprint race, and maybe just taking a bit too long really to dial in. Of course, 2 fairly inexperienced drivers as well, so maybe not quite the direction there that they've had in previous years from the likes of Coletti and Rossi. So yeah, work to be done for them. Campos Racing, they've lost, of course, to their Permentina. kind of backing that they had with Haryanto last year, so maybe their kind of financial structure isn't quite where it used to be. Coletti just was kind of nowhere. He made 2 pit stops in the feature race, I believe, and struggled in the sprint race as well. To say he's a driver of such experience, he really was pretty absent from this weekend. Boschung beat him as well, of course. Coletti much more experienced, so I think good foundations for Boschung. He'll be in for the full season. Coletti will probably be replaced, I'm going to guess, although he may do a couple of rounds until they find someone of kind of good financial backing. But yeah, not good foundations really there at Campos. I think there's quite a few troubles, and same with racing engineering as well. But as we've said with pretty much everyone, hopefully the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much covered everyone on the grid now. So if we have a look at the title battle, as we said, we've got Charles Leclerc currently in the lead after a podium and a win on 36 points. Bit of a gap back to Artem Markelov, 8 points on 28, and then again, considering it's at this stage of the season, Ollie Rowland bit further back again on 20 points, already 16 points off the lead of the championship. And then we've got Giotto, Nato and Jordan King on 18 at the moment, so that's really the main leading group. So obviously F2, it's not like F1, it's just impossible really to kind of predict any title battles. Obviously in F1 we can easily see that it's going to be Hamilton versus Vettel for the title, and last year we could obviously see it would be Hamilton versus Rosberg. Is there any particular title battles that we could maybe look out for this season? Obviously involving Charles Leclerc, but who else is most likely to be in there come the end of the season?
I'd say this is between Leclerc and Rowland. I think the Russian time duo of Markelov and Giotto will be up there. But outside of them, I can't see anyone else winning this championship, to be honest. I think for me it is between Leclerc and Rowland. Markelov, depends if he can get his consistency sorted out, to be honest. To be fair, the sprint race, of course, where he finished 8th, wasn't really his fault because he had to make a pit stop, of course, pretty much really out of sequence, and of course it was a sprint race, so he shouldn't be making a pit stop unless you were Leclerc, of course, and he was going on to the medium tyres, whereas Leclerc was going on to soft tyres. So I think Markelov does seem to have improved his consistency in one regard, but I think it's going to kind of reoccur over these next few rounds. So yeah, for me it's Leclerc versus Rowland all the way, with Giotto and Markelov kind of as the outside contenders, and outside of that, I'm just looking down this list and I can't see anyone else, to be honest, winning this championship. We might have them kind of contending for it. Nato will probably win a few races, we might see the ARTs up there at selected events, but yeah, for me it's Leclerc versus Rowland.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. They are the two very, very early favourites. We've got a lot of drivers here with potential to win a race. We saw that last season where so many different drivers ended up winning races in the end, but it was really mainly Gasly and Giovinazzi fighting for the title, and I think we'll see something quite similar this year with Leclerc and Rowland kind of slowly edging their way through these consistent good results, and I think it could be a good season between these two for the title, with Leclerc taking the early advantage, of course. Now, to finish off, a couple of final thoughts on this race and a couple of predictions for the feature and sprint races in Spain that we've got in a few weeks' time. So, firstly, who would you say was your driver of the weekend? I think there is really not many people. Well, one person we can't really look past for that. But anyway, your driver of the weekend, and any first predictions and thoughts for the next race in Spain?
Yeah, I've got to go for Leclerc, to be honest. I mean, Markelov is right up there as well, but I've got to go for Leclerc. So this is his rookie weekend. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Markelov in second. Quick shout out as well to Nicholas Latifi. He finished 4th in the sprint race. We haven't mentioned him yet. And actually had a really solid race there, finishing right behind teammate Ollie Rowland. And to be fair, Latifi hasn't quite got the results in previous years, so that's pretty impressive. His second best ever result in the series. So just a quick shout out to him. In terms of predictions then for Barcelona, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, it's so tough to predict, but of course that is why we love it. If we look at last year, Nominato won the feature race, of course, with a brilliant pass on Pierre Gasly, while Sergei Sorokin spun his car while leading, of course. Nato, of course, is still here. Alex Lynn, who won the sprint race, isn't. I think Nato could be quite strong as well, to be honest, again, in Barcelona. He should be right up there. We'll probably see the usual suspects as well, with Clerc up there. But I'm going to... this is a really tough one, but I'm going to say Ollie Rowland is going to win the feature race, and then in the sprint race, I'm going to say, I reckon Luca Giotto will win that one. But of course it's always pretty hard to predict, because of course it just depends who benefits from that reverse grid, but yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to pass in Barcelona compared to Bahrain, so that kind of reverse grid pole is going to be a lot more important than it was in Bahrain, because in Bahrain it didn't really matter where you were on the grid, as we really saw Leclerc passing 13 cars in 8 laps, so I don't think I'm going to see that at Barcelona. But high-deck circuit, so maybe we'll see these strategies come into play. Do you think that we're going to see some more kind of wild strategies? Do you think we're going to see pit stops in the sprint race, Alex?
I don't know about pit stops in the sprint race. I mean, obviously, everyone would have seen what Charles Leclerc managed to do in Bahrain, and they'll have to think about it. It will be in the back of everyone's mind, really, if they're in a position where they could potentially win the race or gain a few positions. So, for Spain, I think you've got to be looking at Charles Leclerc. Obviously, again, my driver of the day driver of the weekend, I should say, for Bahrain. When it comes to predicting F2 races, it's basically impossible because F2 championships are built off consistency as they have been in recent years, really, especially with Gasly and Giovinazzi. For the feature race, you have to look at someone like Leclerc or Roland, or potentially even Artem Markelov and Norman Nato, who have been strong here in recent years. But again, like you were saying, it's going to be quite difficult to overtake, so maybe for the sprint race we could see a bit more of an obscure winner, someone who isn't quite so likely to maybe challenge for the title. Maybe Matsushita, who lost out on his pole position in Bahrain. Perhaps he could be up there at least in the sprint race, but I'm going to say for the race win in the feature race, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc again, and for the sprint race, I'm going to say Jordan King, because he's been very, very consistent so far. He's been quite quiet so far, and if you can get a good slot for the sprint race with maybe some of the stronger guys a little bit further back, I think he's got a good chance of winning that one. So that is going to be it for our Bahrain review and a little bit of a Spain preview there at the end as well. So thank you very much, Josh, for coming on to analyse this. Much better than I ever could, I have to say. And that is going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for watching or listening today. Both our Twitters can be found in the description, as well as the Motorcast Twitter as well. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.